Hey guys, in this section, let's work on the API gateway for our application using Nginx. This is our application. We have developed this service, tested, it works fine. We have developed this service, tested, works fine. This integration also we tested using mock server. So individual services, they are all working fine. Now we are going to work on this API gateway. API gateway is a tool or a service which is in between the client and the backend servers. So the main goal of this is to act like a reverse proxy, a proxy server which will hide all the backend complexity. If you see, right, we have multiple servers, services, databases. Each and every application, they might use different ports. So many things going on here. API gateway will simply hide all the backend complexity and expose the APIs, whatever you want to expose, via one single port. That is the idea. So after our setup in this section, so you can access all our APIs only via one specific port. That is how it's going to work. You cannot access Mongo via port 27017 and all from outside world, or you cannot access this application by using port 8080. So none of these applications will be using host port mapping. It's okay. So the only way to access all these applications is only by using this API gateway. This is how we are going to simulate. Now, if you might be wondering that, hey, if this is the only application which is going to receive all the requests, how it will know that when to send a request to candidate service and when to send the request to job service. So for that, we are going to do path based routing. Okay, I'll come to that. And sometimes you might be running multiple instances of job service, multiple instances of candidate service as well. Okay, so you send a request, it will be sending the request to one instance of the job service, get it processed, and it will respond. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. So we can see the path based routing, load balancing, and hiding all the complexity by using our API gateway. Okay, so the path based routing is going to be like this. If our API gateway, if it receives a request for this path, API job, then it will be routing the request to job service. And if it receives a request like this, API candidate, then it will be routing that to candidate service. Okay, so hopefully this would be a fun, interesting section. So let's get started. Hey guys, before we start working on the API gateway, I would like to make one small change in both candidate service and the job service. The change is nothing but adding a simple property called host name. That is, you might be wondering, hey, it doesn't make any sense. Why are we adding this in the candidate DTO? Okay, yes, so it might not make sense, but the idea here is we would be running multiple instances of job service and multiple instances of candidate service. Okay, so we would like to know which container processed the request so that we can understand whether the load is getting balanced or not. Okay, that is the idea. That is why I'm adding this. Otherwise, if you do not add this, we can also check the log to see whether which container processed the request, but checking the log it kind of a little bit difficult. Okay, so that is why I am adding this property. Okay, so under util I am going to create a class called app-util. So this app-util, it's going to have private static final string, something called host name. Okay, so I am going to use a static block here to set this. So host name, inet address, get localhost, get host name. Okay, super, that's it. Okay, so this guy will throw exception, so probably let's surround with a try catch. I think this guy is happy now. Okay, so now let's public static string get host name, return host name. Okay, super. if you run this in your machine, okay, so if whatever the machine, your host name currently, that you would be seeing that in the response actually. Okay, so the container, they will be having their own host name actually. So each and every Docker container, they are like virtual machines, right? So we have already discussed that. Okay, now let's go to DTO util. So as part of this, right, the hostname property, so it's not part of the candidate, we add this only in the DTO. So the copy properties will be setting other values. We have to set that the hostname here. DTO set hostname is app util get hostname. Okay, so now we are adding this here, and we are adding this for details DTO as well. Okay, so these two places we are setting it here. Okay, just because we are using the all arg constructor and no arg constructor, right? So our test will fail now because this guy, okay, if you notice, it expects 4 properties. The host name also becomes as part of the all arg constructor now. So it's a compilation provoke, it will error, so we have to pass null. We are not using it anyway, so we can simply pass null here. Okay, just to keep this happy. Okay, so now yeah, let's go ahead and make changes in this job service. So I'm in the job service. So I have copied the app util, whatever we have created now. I'm going to simply paste it here to save some time. So now we also have app util in the job service. Okay, so now let's go to the DTO, and I'm going to add hostname here. So this is good. Now let's go to util, and whenever, okay, this is where we are returning the job DTO. So DTO set hostname is app util get hostname. Oh, I have to change that test as well. Let's go there. Job service IT. I should be getting some compilation problem here. Okay, so the last property should be null. Okay, so now yeah, everything should be fine. Hey guys, in this lecture we are going to set up the project for API gateway. So in my host I have one directory called Spring Docker. Under that I have the job service, candidate service, whatever we have developed so far. Okay, so this is where I have these services. In the same level, I am going to create a directory called API gateway. So I want you to do the same actually. Then I'm going to create a couple of directories under API gateway. So the first one is data directory. Then there is another directory called conf. So this is where I'm going to keep the nginx files. I can also use the data directory, but I would like to keep that separately. Okay, so let's keep that separately. Then I want one file called docker compose YAML. Okay, before we start working on this API gateway, I would like to clarify one important thing, that whatever we are doing this, right, this is not something like we would be deploying this in production. Job service is a microservice which we will be deploying. Candidate service is a microservice which we will be deploying in production. But API gateway, on the other hand, whatever we develop, this is not something like we would be deploying this actually. Because if you are on the cloud provides, like AWS, they provide better tools for this. And if you are going to use Kubernetes, which we would be using as part of our cloud native series of courses, so I will be demonstrating how to do this using Kubernetes. Okay, so Kubernetes, cloud, they all provide better tools for this. However, what here we are doing here is, by using Docker Compose, we are going to simulate production. That is, if you are a developer who is responsible for multiple microservices, you do not have to wait to deploy things in production to test. Instead, you can use Docker Compose and the way in which and nginx to simulate production, and we can see how things is going to work in production. Okay, so that is the idea of API gateway project, and this is not something like you would be kind of deploying it in production. Okay, however, it can be a project, it can be part of your Bitbucket or GitHub, so the developers they can pull this code and they can test it in their local, okay, so that we developers we can use it among us. However, as I keep saying, we will not be deploying it in production because this is not a microservice, okay. So the cloud Kubernetes, they provide better tools for this than whatever we are doing here, okay. So remember that. Let's start creating the Docker Compose file. So as usual, the version is going to be 3.0. Services. So we need a Mongo database here, okay. Then we will be having a job service, okay, and we will be having candidate service. Don't worry, I am going to come and we will be filling all these details, okay. Just I would like to take a note of what we have to do here, okay. I keep making the same mistake for candidate, okay, and the last one is Nginx, okay. So these are the things we have to do, okay. So for the Mongo, right, the image is Mongo, we know this, and we are going to do volume mapping, okay. For the volume mapping, what we are going to say is that, okay, there is in the current directory, there is a data directory, go and read it, and whatever the files you have, we are going to map it with the docker entry point init db.d, okay. Oops, sorry, init db.d, okay guys, please just check the spelling, everything should, okay. So this is exactly what I want. Remember that, and do note that I am not using any port mapping because we do not need any port mapping. All the services, they will talk among themselves using their network, okay. So we do not need any host port map. So now this Mongo needs some files, right? So now let's go to our job service, go to source, test, resources, data. So the job in it, copy the file and let's paste it here, okay. So then do the exact same thing, copy the candidate service, source, test, resources, okay. So copy the candidate in it, okay. This file, do not copy the job in JSON, that's for the mock server, okay. So now we have this the data directory, we have the files copied. Now when the application starts, we will be initializing our application with this data. Now some of you might be asking this question, so I want to clarify this, that is job service, candidate service, they should we not spin up their own separate Mongo database, separate Docker container for each and everything? If you want, you can do this, that is you can create multiple services like Mongo 1, Mongo 2, so that each and everything can do, this can talk to Mongo 1, this can talk to Mongo 2, something like that. You can do that way. For me, we don't have to do this, is mainly because Mongo is a database server under which these applications, we are creating a separate database called candidate, okay. So they have their own username and password and they have their own collections, etc., okay. So this is totally fine. So each and every service, they have their own database, under that they will be having their own collections and documents, they have their separate username and password, so they will not mess up. So this is totally fine for us, okay. Then let's work on the job service. So the image is going to be, we can give whatever the name you like. Of course, I'm going to give job service, or you can also say your account name, job service, something like that, okay. So whatever the image, however you are going to build, let's use that here, okay. So let's keep it like this for now, okay. Then it depends on Mongo, okay. Let's not forget that, okay. Then environment, the environment is going to be Spring data mongodb.uri : now within double quotes, I'm going to say MongoDB : / okay, job user : job password at Mongo is the server name here, :27017. This container can access that, send the request to that container port, okay, /job. Okay, so this is fine, but this will not be exposing any port. Okay, remember that. Also, what if the Docker image is not present? Okay, this Docker image can be pulled from the Docker hub, from the internet, but what if we have removed all the images? Okay, so let's build. Okay, let's also use that option, build. Okay, so build, what I'm going to say is that, hey, for the Docker file, usually you will be saying dot, but here the Docker file is not here. Okay, in the API gateway there is no Docker file. So if you want a Docker file, you have to go to, okay, from the Docker compose file, where you have to go. Okay, go out of API gateway and look for Docker file in the job service. So that is what we are saying here. So go to parent directory, and there is a directory called job service. That is where the Docker file is present. Go and take it from there. That is what we are saying here. The candidate service is going to be exactly same. So I'm going to copy this guy and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so just check the space, everything. Okay, so it should be candidate service. So that is where the Docker file is there. That's what we are saying. And it should be candidate service. Okay, so this is also good. Now this depends on Mongo. This also depends on job service, actually, in a way, right? So let's do this. And here it has to be candidate user, candidate password, and the database is candidate. Okay, so this is good. And if you remember, it also expect one more property called, okay, not Spring, it's called a job.service.url, if you remember. Okay, and it's going to be HTTP. Okay, so where the job service is present, as I had said earlier, one service can talk to another service just by using its name. So this can send the request to job service, HTTP job service. Okay, what is the port? 8080. Okay, and it should be like this. Okay, so this is how it will be sending the request. The search will be appended internally by our job client. That is how we have done. So this is what we have to set here. Okay, hey guys, in this lecture let's focus on the Nginx configuration for path based routing. Okay, so if you want to know more about this, go to Docker Hub actually, and if you scroll down, as I had mentioned earlier, they will always provide a lot of information actually. So we have already done this HTML mapping, we have already done this. But if you want to do some advanced configuration, complex configuration, this is where the Nginx expects the file, configuration file. So we have to create it somewhere and map it with this path, container path. So if you want to know more about the configuration, go to this direction, this site, and particularly read the beginner's guide. That's what they say. So if you go to that beginner's guide, right, so they give you some examples actually how to configure this file, etc. Okay, this is how the structure should be. They give you a lot of examples actually. Particularly we are interested in the location directive. Okay, so if it matches, do this. If it's like this, do this, or something like this. So you would be giving all the location directive like this. So we would be doing in this lecture, so you can understand. However, if you have some kind of advanced use case, I want you to check the documentation because it's huge. Okay, so we can do a lot of stuff with the Nginx actually. Okay, so now let's come back to our Docker Compose YAML. So here I'm going to use the image Nginx, of course. Okay, then it depends on what candidate service, and it depends on job service as well. Okay, then it's going to use ports mapping, of course. So 80, Nginx will, okay, Nginx will listen on port 80. We are going to map that with our host port 80. Okay, so this is the only service which will be doing port mapping. Okay, everything else will be accessible only within that network. Okay, so because this is the API gateway for us. Okay, now volume mapping. So the volume mapping, we are going to say in the current directory there is a conf directory. In the conf directory I am going to create something called nginx conf file. I would like to map that with etc nginx.conf. okay, so this is how we would like to map. Let's create this file. So under conf I am going to create a file called nginx conf. Okay, so now go to this file. This file is going to contain two important things. One is called events. So worker connection, this is important actually. Worker connection 1024. okay, it can be anything, but the default value is 1024. so yeah, so basically number of concurrent connections. Okay, this many clients it should be able to serve at the same time. Okay, Nginx, that's what it means actually, events. So by default it's 1024, so I am trying to use the same value here. Okay, and HTTP. okay, so now this will be containing server section. In the server section will be server section will contain location directive. Okay, so this is where we are going to do the path based routing. Okay, so now basically what it means is that if the path, you will be giving something, if the path is like this, okay, what do you want to do here? Something like this. You can just give the whatever you want to do, you can give it here. Okay, just to give you an idea, a server block, whatever we had just written in the nginx conf file, might contain multiple location directives or location blocks. I want you to see this location block something like an if, something like a if condition. Okay, so in a high level that's what it is actually. So it's like a if condition. So what we are saying here is, if you see, if the path starts with the slash, execute this. That is what we are saying. Now if you see, if you ask me, hey, what do you mean by execute this, what are we going to have here? We will come to that later, but for the time being assume that there is something that will be executed. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, so it's something like a if block. So let's imagine that this is the URL. Okay, now winskuru.com is my domain, so that somebody types winskuru.com, it comes to my nginx server directly. Okay, beyond that, if the path starts with the slash, yeah, execute this. That's what you are saying. So it basically means /a /b /a will match, /API will match, /1 2 3 everything will match because they all start with the slash. So it basically means that, okay, if the path starts with the slash, execute this. That's what you are saying here. Okay, now no, my requirement is different. The path should be exactly slash. I do not want anything else after that. If you say something like this, then it should be exact match. It should be equal to slash. Okay, only then this will work. This will not work because this is not an exact match. Okay, here this is exact match, so it has to be equal sign. Okay, again, if you have some requirements like my path should be starting with the /API, then you have to say like this. Then winskuru.com /API BC will work, but ABC will not work because the path doesn't start with API. Guys, remember, it basically means that it starts with, not exact match. If you want exact match, you have to use this, as I said. Okay. In some cases, if you want to use some kind of regular expressions, for example, let's say my path should be starting with API, but it will contain some kind of number. I do not know what number it is, but it should be containing some number. Okay, if you have requirements like this, then you have to say /API like this, and notice the tilde sign. That basically means that this is regex. That's what we are seeing here. If you are not using this right, it will take this literally. That is, the path has to be exactly starting with /API, this bracket 029 everything. Okay, so it will take it literally. There are n number of ways to do this allocation configuration, guys, so we cannot cover everything. So the documentation is the best source for you. Okay, if you let's, as I said, this is a if condition, right? If you put this as the top if block or top location directive in the server block, this will match first. Okay, because of that this will be always executed, which we do not want. So if you ever want to have this, put it in the bottom. Okay, so whichever should be matched, whichever high priority, bring it to the top in the server block. And this is something like, I would keep it as a top, bottom else block. Okay, bottom most else block. Okay, so this is something like that, remember that. Okay, so with that information we can start writing this. So what we are going to say here is /API/job. Okay, if the URI path is going to contain is going to be like this. Okay, after that, and it can be anything. Okay, it basically means that it should start with the API job, something like that. Then just forward the request to job service. So it's called proxy pass. Okay, proxy pass. Now remember, this file is going to be placed inside the Nginx container. Nginx container can talk to candidate service, job service, as they are all in the same network. So how do you think that it will talk to job service? Simply like this. Okay, job service, this is its host name or service name, :8080/job. Okay, so it basically means is that, okay, do it like this. So now let's imagine that. Okay, so let's imagine that request is sent like this: job search scales something. Okay, how it will be forwarded is, okay, so when we send a request like this, so since it starts with the API job, so it will see this will match, then it will simply forward the request to this guy. So what it will do is that, since it matches whatever we have beyond this point, so what are we having beyond this point? This guy, right? So this will be taken. Okay, exactly this block, this guy will be taken and it will be appended here, and this is what we will be sending to the job service. Okay, so remember that. So yeah, this is how it's going to work. Okay, now let's copy this guy and paste it here. Let's do the same for the candidate. So the URI path is going to be containing like this: API candidate. We would like to forward that to candidate service, and it's going to be candidate. Okay, so like this. So yep, it looks good to me. Okay guys, everything is going great so far. Now I would like to add one small thing in a Docker Compose YAML file, which we didn't discuss before, but we are going to see that in this section anyway. Okay, which is scaling the number of containers. Okay, in the real life, you will not be running one Docker container or one node of job service, right? You will want to scale horizontally. You will be running multiple instances of job service, multiple instances of the candidate service, right? So that we can do that with the Docker Compose actually. Okay, so for that there is an option. Okay, so you can say deploy, okay, and replicas. Okay, replicas is a deploy property, so just notice the space tab here. Okay, and I'm going to run 2 containers. So you can also use T2, 3, whatever you like here. Okay guys, but remember that you allocate enough CPU memory to do the Docker process, which you can always click on the Docker icon, and if you go to resources, you can adjust CPU memory, etc. Okay, so okay, now I'm going to just run 2 containers here. Okay, I'm going to do the exact same thing for the candidate service. Okay, so we are running two instances of job service, two instances of candidate service. Okay, API gateway is going to just get that passed to appropriate services, get it balanced, all those things. It will be happening behind the scenes for us. Okay, so no worries. I think everything looks good here. Okay guys, now at this point our API gateway project looks good to me. Okay, so we have already created all the required things to run this. Okay, which is nice. Now even if I do not have the Docker images, if I say Docker compose up minus minus build, this image will be automatically built by Docker. Okay, and these images will be pulled from the Docker Hub internet. Okay, which is good. However, this image, in order to build this image, we need to have the jar file present. Okay, so ensure that the jar is present because it's a dependency, otherwise the Docker image cannot be built. So ensure that the jar file is present. Okay, so since we have updated the host name, we have to rebuild this jar probably once, so please do it once. Also guys, if you remember long back when we created the Dockerfile, I wanted to demo by ignoring the expose. I kind of continued without adding that back. Please, let's add that. Okay, it's a more of a documentation. It's not really required. However, if you say Docker PS, right, that time this port will not show if you do not say this. So we need this. Okay, add this, save this actually. Okay, expose 8080. I update this for job service. I'm going to update this for for the candidate service as well. Okay, ensure that we are having this. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so now we have everything at this point. Yeah, we can go to our terminal and run this. Okay, so I'm in the project terminal now. Let me search for images. I have removed everything. I have only Nginx and Mongo. So let's see, our Docker compose will automatically should build the images. Okay, so minus minus build up, minus minus build. Okay, so let me hit enter. So wow, it's super fast. Okay, this is cool. Now let's go to Docker compose PS. If you see, okay, so now we are seeing two instances of candidate service. This is nice. I am seeing two instances of job service. This is also nice. One Mongo and our API gateway Nginx. If you see, this is the only port we have done mapping. All other ports are just available only within that network actually. Okay, if you do not use that expose, right, we will not be seeing this actually. This is why we add that, so that it looks like a documentation. So somebody else, if they come and see this, oh, this is exposing port 8080. Okay, they will understand. That is why. Okay, now there is one more thing I had told you long back when we were playing with the Docker compose, saying that by default Docker compose will be taking the project directory and it will be taking the service name. It will be appending that to create the name for the container, and it will add one. When I say this number part, right, I told you that I will be covering that later. Okay, that later is now. That is, so by default we will be running only one container. Because of that, it will say just one. But in this case, we are running multiple instances of candidate service, multiple instances of job service. So because of that, it adds, oh, this is first instance, this is second instance, something like this. So you can run 10 containers, 20 containers if you like actually. So it will be adding some number like 3, 4, 5, something like that. Okay, so this is how it will do. To be honest, I'm really super excited to see all these things up and running. So now let me launch the browser. Okay, so yeah, now let me go to HTTP localhost. Okay, we don't, okay, our Nginx listening on port 80, so there is no port required. Job, Oh, okay. You know what? If you remember, if we have to use API. Okay, this is the path we have to use API job all, because only then our it will be routed, because that's how our Nginx is expecting. So let's hit enter. Wow, wow, this is cool, right? So we are getting all the list of jobs here. Now if you see the host name is nothing but the container, random. So Docker will assign some random host name to the container actually. Okay, so if you refresh, if you see, the host name is getting changed, so the load is getting balanced between these two containers we have. If you run 5 containers, probably you will be seeing all the 5 IDs. Looks like it's a round robin. Okay, so it kind of, one time we get one instance, yeah, other time we're getting the other host, something like that. So this is cool, right? Now what about candidate all? Okay, let's look for candidate all. Wow, so we are also getting the candidates. Again, the load is getting balanced between those two candidate service containers. So we see that actually host name is getting changed. This is cool. So what about the recommended jobs for candidate ID 1? Wow, Sam, he has Java and Spring skill set. Because of that, he is getting the Java Spring related job. We are showing them as a recommendation. Okay, so this is cool. Okay, so okay, the host name is getting changed. This is what I wanted to verify. This is nice. So now actually we send the request to Nginx. Nginx calls candidate service. Candidate service behind the scenes calls job service. See, everything is happening super fast. Cool, nice. Okay, so what about 2? So for Docker we got Docker job. For 3 we got this Jira, we got some Jira jobs. Okay, this is cool, right? So this is how it's going to be working like in production. Okay, so this is our API gateway. We'll be receiving the request and it will be forwarding to all the backend and the services, getting that load balanced and returning the response. Okay, from our perspective, the URI, see, if you see, we are not changing the port or anything. We will be always sending to one single API gateway. Behind the scenes, everything is taken care by our Nginx. Okay, so this is cool. Now let's go back to the terminal. Now if you say Control C, then it will kind of stop all the Docker containers actually. Okay, now everything is gone. Now if I say Docker compose down, everything is gone from my machine, all the containers. Okay, so now if I say up, basically the entire infrastructure is gone. Okay, now if I say Docker compose up, everything is brought up, see, in a few seconds. Wow, this is cool. Now if I say Docker compose ps, see, everything is up and running in the machine, right? Docker compose, they're like great tools, guys. Hey guys, in this lecture, I'm thinking of adding a little bit of UI into our application. So we have everything up and running, the API gateway, databases, backend services, everything is up and running, everything works great. However, there is one small piece which is missing, that is UI. Okay, so to make this complete, let's add a little bit of UI. Okay, that is the idea. So I have given a template in the previous lecture. You would have noticed that there would be a note for you to download the HTML template. So I want you to download that, and I'm going to create a directory inside this. Okay, so I'm going to call this HTML, and under that I'm going to create a file called index.html. Okay, so go to that file and paste whatever you have downloaded. Okay, so this template, I simply just created this using the bootstrap template. That is, what I would normally would do is that just I will go to getbootstrap.com. Okay, so actually I had used this version. Okay, so now if you see, if you come here, right, so there will be a starter template. I simply will copy, then I will just look for some kind of a layout, some kind of element, whatever. I will just use that examples, and I will just put it here to come up with some kind of a simple template just for me. Okay, so this is how it will look like if you try to access that index.html, right? So basically nothing is there. So here we have jobs, and here you click on the candidate, then you will be seeing the candidate. Okay, so I think yeah, so this is what we are going to do. So now currently of course it will not show anything, so we have to use the JavaScript to make everything work here. So that is what we are going to do. So if you go back, right, if you see the whole JavaScript part is missing, that is what we have to do. Okay, so let's work on it. And how I have been thinking of doing is that, so now if I go back to the HTML file, right, so now if I click, there will be two buttons, one navigation or job navigation, candidate navigation. So if I click on the job navigation, this should enable, and we should be seeing the jobs, and we should be loading all the details, okay, including the host name. And if I click on the candidates, now this should enable. Actually by default it's enabled, but we have to fix it via JavaScript. Okay, we have to do that. So that time we would be pulling the candidate details, and we would be filling it here. Okay, so every time you click, the section will load, and we have to make the API call, get the data, load it. Okay, so we have to do as and when we click, and this should enable something like that. Okay, so yeah, that is the idea. So simple UI, but let's see how it goes. Okay, let's first identify that navigation buttons and the tables. If you scroll up, there is a job nav button, candidate nav button. Okay, these two buttons, and these are the tables in which we have to load the data. One is job list and candidate list. Okay, so job nav, candidate nav, job list, candidate list. Okay, so these two the four elements, they are important. Now let's identify those. So job nav is equals document dot get element by id job nav. Okay, this is what we have. Then list job, that okay, let me call this job table. Okay, whatever we want to call. Okay, now let me copy this, paste it, and it's going to be candidate nav and the candidate table. Okay, so we have identified those four elements. Now the idea here is, as and when I click on the navigation button, add event listener. So if somebody clicks on it, we are going to call a job to load the data into the job table. So we have to call the backend, get the data, and load the table. So let me call this fetch jobs, something like that. Okay, we have to create the function. So now const fetch jobs is equals, this is where we are going to make a call. So in order to make a call, we need to know the URI, the path. So who is going to call? The browser is going to make a call. So the browser should be sending a request to Nginx. Nginx will figure it out from there. So we can also do like this, HTTP, all those things, but we can also use relative path. The browser will append take the domain host, all those information automatically, all the port, all those information. If you use a relative path like this, so we can use relative path. So this is good. Now once you have the path, then you can simply say constant response is equals await. We are going to use the fetch util. Okay, if you give the URL information, it will automatically give call and it will give you the data. Okay, I mean, sorry, it will make a request and it will get the response. Okay, so then you have to say jobs is equals await response.json. Okay, response.json will give you the JSON object, so which is going to be a list of jobs for us. Now you have to take each and every job and add it to the table now. Okay, so I'm adding the job to a table, right? I'm going to create a separate function here, so we have to still come and do some work here. So let's come back here. So constant add job to table. Here I'm going to pass one job and the row number or index, whatever we can call this, these two information, so that because I want to show the serial number, the row number as well, so that is why I need the index. So here we are going to add, because this row number, this is why I wanted that information. Here we are going to fill the details here. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, 7 rows. So let's copy this guy and constant template, let's keep it like that. Oops. Okay, so okay, 1 2 3 4. Okay, looks like we have 7. It's fine. Okay, so the first one is index, so I'm going to simply put the index like that. Okay, so now here we have to fill the data. So here it's going to be job something, I do not know what it is. Okay, sorry about that. Description, company, salary, remote. Okay, so it's going to be description. Let me copy this guy, paste it, company, salary, is remote, but actually this is a boolean, right? So okay, I'm going to write it like this. So yes, no. Okay, so yeah, this will be nice. Then skills hostname, skills hostname. Okay, so I think this is good. Yep, this is nice. Okay, so now what we are going to do is that const row, I'm going to create a new element, create element, so called tr, and row dot inner html is our template. So basically we are building this string. Okay, so it's a build based on these details. We built the entire string and we are storing this as a row inner html. So now we have the inner html. Okay, so now the whole row object can be added to the job actually. Okay, that the table. So what we are going to say is that job table append child, so add this row. Okay, so as and when we get a row, we will be building this information. We will be getting, okay, as and when we get the job object, we will be building the row and we will be adding it to the table. Okay, that's it. So now here what I'm going to do is that jobs for each job, because jobs is a list, right? For each job, okay, job comma index, Okay, so for each job, add job to table, job and index. Okay, pass these two information. That's it. Super simple stuff, right? Okay, however, okay, so there is one small bug, that is, for the first time when our page is loaded, right, the table, this job table, it will be empty. So let's imagine that you get 5 jobs. Okay, so we will be adding that information into the job table. If you click on it again, right, again we are making a call, again we are adding another 5 jobs into the table. So we keep adding, so the table will keep growing actually. So whenever this fetch job is called, we want to ensure that the table is empty. We want, okay, so we have to do the fresh loading actually. So what I'm going to do is that before I append, I would like to remove everything. So which is replace children. There is a method replace children, correct? Yeah, okay. So if you do this way, right, so it will ensure that okay, actually sorry guys, job table, okay, yeah, job table dot replace children. Okay, let me quickly check. It's a replace okay, yeah, replace children. Okay, so it will remove everything. Now we are adding jobs to the table. Okay, so now if I click on it, every time this table is cleared and we load the data. And I would like to make a few corrections here and there. I just noticed actually. The first one is I have not used async. Okay, so whenever we use await, ensure that we are using async because it's going to be completely asynchronous. So next one is index starts from 0. So I don't want to show 0 in the display. So I would like to add a +1 so that it will start from 1 actually. So that is another thing. And I also noticed that in our we are using lowercase actually. At least that's what I have used in the test data here, right? So if you see capital, sorry, if you see the date, name, job, everything is looks lowercase. Okay, so because of that, what I'm planning to do is that I would like to use a class called text capitalize actually. Okay, so this will kind of capitalize the word, the first letter. Okay, capitalize, is it correct? Capitalize. Okay, so this is right. So this class will do that for us. So job description, and for the company it makes sense. Salary doesn't make sense. Is remote? No. Skills, maybe for skills, yep, we can have it. And the host name does not make sense. Okay, so for this, yeah, let's add this class. Okay, so that's it. Everything else look okay to me. Okay, let's continue the same for the candidate. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to basically just we are going to copy this and modify this. Okay, that's what we are going to do. So now this is going to be candidate now. Okay, so let me copy this guy and it's going to be fetch candidates. Okay, so when I click on the navigation button, I'm going to call this method. So this method is not there, so let's create this here. So it's going to be fetch candidates. Okay, so again it's going to be candidate. Everything else looks good. Okay, you know what, let me copy this guy and paste it here. Candidate table, replace children, candidates. This is what we are going to get it here. Okay, so everything looks good. So add candidate to table. Okay, this method is not there, so let's create that. Okay, so wherever you see job, just replace it with the candidate. Okay, that is what I'm doing, nothing else actually. Okay, So it looks good. Now let's copy this guy and paste it, and again let's modify. Okay, so let me update the method, and let me copy this guy, candidate. Okay, so I'm receiving this, so and this is going to be candidate table where I'm going to append the row. Okay, so now if you go back here, so here we have only 4 columns: name, row, name, skills, hostname. Okay, super simple. The row is already there. The name is going, oops, sorry, my god. Okay, let's not touch this table. Okay, here the row is already there, so now it's going to be candidate name. Okay, then candidate skills, and remove all this stuff, candidate host name. Okay, so we get that property and we just display that. So yeah, this looks good. There is one thing still missing. For example, if we have 2 buttons, you know, right, jobs and the candidates in the index HTML. Okay, if you had noticed, so when you click on it, this should be activated and we should be loading the data, and when you click on the candidate, that should be activated and we should be seeing the data. So only the active this stuff, it should come here when you click on it, and so we should remove from here. And when you click on this candidate, we should add the active here and we should remove from here. Okay, also if something is already active, it should not be clickable. Okay, so this is what I would like to do. So that part is missing, so let's work on it. So it is under nav and a tag, and the class is active. Using that we can query actually. Okay, remove the extra space. Okay, so now I'm going to create another function called const activate element. Okay, so I'm going to have like this. So document query selector. So the query selector is nav. Okay, under that there is something called a, which is active. Take that element. That's what we are saying here. Okay, its class. Okay, in its class list, remove these classes actually. Okay, remove this class and disable the class. It's not there, but I'm going to add it actually. So okay, so basically, as when we have this, so none of these both buttons will not be active. We are removing the existing active actually. Okay, now we are going to get one element. That element is going to be activated. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So class list add. Okay, so add active disabled. Okay, so we are going to receive an element and we are going to active disabled. Okay, looks good. So how are you going to pass the element? That we are going to do here actually. So that is when somebody calls fetch jobs, so I am going to activate it. So I'm going to say activate element. I'm going to pass the job nav. Okay, because when somebody clicks on the fetch in the job nav button, that time we are activating it. That's what I'm doing. Okay, so similarly here I have to say candidate nav here and activate it. Okay, so yeah, so let's quickly check everything. Everything seems to be fine actually. So the only thing is that actually when you try to access the index HTML, nothing will be there by default. So we have to add this. So because if you see, only if you click on that, these things are going to be loaded. So I'm going to add window add event listener. So when the page is loaded, by default I'm going to load the jobs actually. Okay, so fetch jobs, can keep it like that, so that the page load event that will be calling fetch jobs, activate that button from, so that you will be seeing some data when you try to access the index.html. Okay, otherwise you have to click on that button to load the data. Okay, so this is why I'm adding this. So yeah, that's it. Our index.html file is ready. However, our Nginx will not serve the content. It's mainly because in our server block in the Nginx conf file, we are not serving the HTML content. That is, we just simply look for API and we are directing to job service or candidate service, and we do not serve anything else. That is how we have written. So now we have to modify the conf file. So again, so if you want to know more about it, so go to docs.nginx.com. So here, how to serve the static content. So what we really need is that, right? So this block, that is, anything starts with a slash, if you remember. So that is what we need here actually. So hey, if you are going to serve index, so it will look for the files like this. Okay, so you can have multiple files, so whichever it finds first, that will be serving actually. That's what it means. So, and where to find the files, so you have to provide the directory in which we are going to store, where we are keeping the files. Okay, so we need this block. Okay, so maybe let me copy this guy. So, and now we are going to add it in our Nginx conf file. Now let's come back to our Nginx conf. As I had mentioned, these are the only two things we check. Okay, so if you try to access index.html, it will be throwing 404 because we are not handling it here. So this is why we copied that block. Now I'm going to place it here. So now anything starts with a slash will also be served now. Okay, so all the static content can be served here. So do not put it here, actually keep it here as the bottom, and then here, this location. So we do not have the index PHP, so I'm going to remove it. And where I am going to place the index.html, so I can put it here in the data directory in the container, or if you remember, we had used this path, Nginx HTML. This is a default location of Nginx. This is where it looks for the files. So let's use the same location and look for the index.html. That's what we are saying. So let's save this. I think this block looks good now. So let me copy this guy. Okay, now I have my index.html in my local. So how to give it to the Nginx? Again, I have to do the volume mapping. So volume mapping is an array, so we can keep writing multiple volume mapping. So now in the current directory there is a HTML directory. In the HTML directory there is one index.html. So that's what I am saying. Go and replace it with this file. Okay, that's what we are saying here. Okay, so we are doing volume mapping like this. Okay, now everything looks good to me. I think at this point I can do a Docker compose up and let's test. That's it. Okay guys, now I'm back to the terminal. So before we do the Docker compose up, right, I want you to do the down first. If you had killed, so remove everything. Okay, so yes, let's start from the clean state always. And if you had removed the image, do a build. Okay, in our case our image is same image, we don't have to change the image. So the things are starting. Let's check quickly here how things are. Okay, so looks like they are all up and running now. So that's it. Now let's go to our browser. So I'm going to access localhost. If you hit enter, wow, so our HTML page is actually, yeah, we are seeing the data, right? So all those 4 records, everything is nice. So its host name is 1B. Let me refresh this. It says BF because now we can see that the data is coming from different container. Okay, so now if I click on it, it says that df8. Again, I go back here. If I come back here, it says that 8 to 9. So basically it comes from different containers. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to see. So this is cool actually. Okay, so wow, every time I do this, it comes from different containers. This is nice, right? Now I'm going to bring the postman. So if you remember long back, we were trying to post a job like staff developer, Apple, this kind of stuff. So now let me try to post it here. So it should be localhost API job. Okay, so yeah, API job slash. So that's it. I think I can post it now if I hit enter. Oh, okay, pretty, yeah, okay. So now yes, it posted. So now if I minimize this, okay, I have to either refresh or I can go to candidate and come back. Now I am seeing stuff developer. Okay, so this is nice. So if you post the data, that is also appears. This is nice. So far we have learned good amount of Docker, I guess. We have spent so much time on local development, testing, etc. using Docker. What's happening after that? To give you an idea at a very high level, once everything is fine in your local, you commit your code. It will trigger the CI/CD server build. Our CI/CD build server will run the test, then it will build the Docker image as we had built, then it will push the image to the Docker hub or some registry. Then it will also notify the Kubernetes master that, hey, we have a new version of job service or candidate service we need to deploy. Then our Kubernetes nodes, it will do the Docker pull and it will run the new version. This is like a 50,000 feet overview. But no worries, as I had mentioned earlier, cloud native application development is going to be a series in which we cover each and everything in detail. So I'll see you all soon in the next course. All the best.